What if I told you that the wealthiest, black community in all of American history was burned to the ground in a single night, not by an earthquake, not by an accident, not by nature, by their own neighbors, May 31st, 1921. Tulsa, Oklahoma. A neighborhood so successful, so prosperous, so impossibly rich that people called it Black Wall Street. Think about that name for a moment. Black Wall Street. This was not a poor neighborhood. This was not a struggling community. This was a place where black doctors treated black patients in their own hospitals, where black lawyers argued cases in their own law offices, where black pilots owned their own planes, where black children went to schools that were better than most white schools in the entire state, in a country that told black people they were worth nothing. These people had built everything. They had their own hotels, their own newspapers, their own banks, their own movie theaters, their own grocery stores. Over 600 businesses owned and operated by black men and women who refused to believe the lie that they could never succeed. 35 blocks of pure black excellence. 35 blocks that proved every racist wrong. 35 blocks that showed the entire world what was possible, and that is exactly why it had to be destroyed, because nothing terrified certain white Americans more than the sight of black success. On the night of May 31st, 1921, a mob gathered. Then grew. Then became an army. Armed with guns, with torches, with hatred that had been building for years, and by the time the sun rose on June 1st, Black Wall Street was gone. 35 blocks. Thousands of homes. 600 businesses. A hospital. Schools. Churches. Libraries, all of it. Gone. In one single night, and then, for nearly 100 years, America pretended it never happened. This is the story they didn't want you to know. This story doesn't start with fire, it starts with something far more powerful, hope. After the Civil War ended in 1865, black Americans were technically free. But freedom on paper and freedom in reality are two very different things. Jim Crow laws made sure black people couldn't vote, couldn't own land, couldn't build anything without white approval. Violence kept them permanently beneath the white establishment, so thousands of black families moved to Oklahoma Territory. A place that felt different. A place that felt like possibility. In Tulsa, in a neighborhood called Greenwood, something extraordinary began to grow. They spent their money with each other. $1 earned in Greenwood stayed in Greenwood, passing through 19 different black-owned businesses before leaving the neighborhood. 19, O.W. Gurley bought an entire block and rented only to black families. J.B. Stratford built the largest black-owned hotel in America. John Williams owned a garage, a store, and a movie theater. In 1921, by 1920 Greenwood had 35 city blocks of pure black excellence. Lawyers, doctors, dentists, pilots, teachers. All black. All thriving. They called it Black Wall Street, and across the railroad tracks in white Tulsa, people were watching, not with admiration, with jealousy, with fear, with rage. The match was already there. It just needed a spark. May 30th, 1921. A Tuesday afternoon, a 19-year-old black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland stepped into an elevator in downtown Tulsa. The operator was a 17-year-old white girl named Sarah Page. What exactly happened, nobody knows. Some say Rowland stumbled and grabbed her arm by accident. Some say she screamed in surprise. Some say nothing happened at all. What we know is this: Sarah Page screamed. Dick Rowland ran. The next morning Rowland was arrested. The Tulsa Tribune published a headline, so inflammatory and so deliberately inciting that it was later physically torn out of every archive copy that could be found. It called for violence. by afternoon a white mob gathered outside the courthouse demanding Rowland be handed over. Not for trial. Not for justice. For lynching, word reached Greenwood. Black veterans of World War I, men who had fought for America in the trenches of France, grabbed their weapons and marched to the courthouse, not to start violence. To prevent a lynching, there were 75 of them. The white mob numbered in the hundreds. Tension crackled in the night air. Shouting. Pushing. Then, a shot. Nobody knows who fired first, but that single shot changed everything. The white mob didn't just fight back. They went to war. They grabbed more weapons, called more people, and turned toward Greenwood. Toward Black Wall Street. They weren't after Dick Rowland anymore, they were after everything black people had spent 20 years building. The night of May 31, 1921 had begun, and before sunrise, nothing would ever be the same again. What happened next was not a riot is chaos. A riot is uncontrolled. A riot is spontaneous. What happened in Tulsa was a massacre. Organized. Coordinated. Deliberate. The white mob descended on Greenwood, armed with rifles, shotguns, pistols, and torches. Moving street by street, block by block, burning everything in their path, but it gets worse. Far worse. The Tulsa Police Department didn't stop them. The police joined them. Officers marched with the mob, helped loot homes, helped set fires. Some reports say police handed out weapons to white civilians, and then, the airplanes, private planes appeared over Greenwood, in the darkness. Witnesses reported being shot at from above. Historians believe planes dropped fire bombs onto the neighborhood below, making Tulsa one of the first American cities ever bombed from the air. Airplanes bombing an American neighborhood. In 1921, black veterans fought back with military precision. They set up defensive positions, held streets, protected their families, fought with impossible courage, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely alone. By dawn, the fires were everywhere. Dreamland Theater, gone. Stratford Hotel, gone. Hospitals, schools, churches, businesses, all burning. Over 10,000 black residents left, homeless in a single night, between 100 and 300 people killed. Exact number unknown because bodies were dumped in rivers and buried in unmarked mass graves, 35 blocks. Reduced to ash. When it was over, Tulsa arrested over 6,000 black residents, not the mob. Not the police who joined them. Not the men with torches and guns, the victims. America had committed one of the worst acts of racial violence in its entire history, and was already preparing to pretend it never happened. The fire went out. The smoke cleared, then came something almost as devastating as the massacre itself, the silence. Newspapers stopped covering it. Official records disappeared. The Tulsa Tribune article was physically torn from every library archive across the city. Insurance companies refused every single claim. Not $1 of compensation for the homes, businesses, hospitals, and churches that burned. For decades it worked. The Tulsa massacre was never taught in Oklahoma schools. Never in textbooks. An entire generation of Americans grew up never knowing Black Wall Street had existed. Survivors carried the wound in silence. Passed it to their children in whispers. Grew old watching the world move on, as if nothing happened. In 1996, 75 years later, Oklahoma finally investigated. The report confirmed everything. The massacre. The police. The airplanes. The mass graves. Reparations were recommended. Oklahoma refused. In 2021, President Biden visited Tulsa. 3 survivors, all over 100 years old, sat beside him. Still waiting for justice after a century. The land where Black Wall Street stood is still largely empty today, but here is what no mob could ever burn. What no torch could destroy, the proof that it was possible. Black Wall Street existed. It thrived. It proved that given simply the chance, Black Americans could build something the entire world had to notice, and when they did, it was burned to the ground. Black Wall Street is gone, but its story refuses to die, and as long as we keep telling it, it never will.